Hello, everybody. Let's talk. Let's give you all a few minutes to join, see what's up. Hello, everyone. Just giving it a second for folks to join. Let's talk about what's going on. We are going to discuss what is happening right now, what we can do about it, what our marching orders are, and what Democrats can be doing, what we are doing that also isn't being communicated to the public as much. So let's fix some of this. But hello, everybody. All right. 20K on, let's talking about it. All right. So first things first, one of the things that I want you all to understand is that if you are watching the news right now and you are feeling overwhelmed by all of the constant headlines and developments and what is happening and federal government changes over here and ICE raids over here and plane crashes over there, and you are feeling so overwhelmed. First of all, know that you are not alone. And second of all, know that that is exactly what this administration is trying to get you to feel. They are trying to get people to feel, and someone said Musk, yeah, you got Elon Musk raiding the federal government and the Treasury. There's all this stuff going on, and it is so easy and it's natural when you see all of this stuff falling apart to get paralyzed because all of it is so overwhelming and you don't know what to do about it, but it's also very pressing information, and so you know it's going to affect your life or the life of people that you know, but what do you do about it? What is Congress doing about it? What's our leadership doing about it? The first order of business is to self-regulate. What authoritarian regimes try to do is that they often try to, what is known as flood the zone, do so much at once, or try to do so much at once that it gets carried in the news that you feel overwhelmed and paralyzed. And it's important for you to understand that the paralysis and shock that you feel right now is the point. They are trying to induce a state of passivity among the general public. So it is of personal importance for you, and it is also of political importance to take a breath. That does not mean tune out. That does not mean get apathetic. It does not mean, to just that you just have to forget or whatever. It just means take a breath, because we are about to lock in and focus. And I already know you, I already hear you all. How do I focus? What do I do? Just take the breath first, okay? Take the breath first. Now, let's talk about all the different things that are going on. And again, a little bit of a preview of a little bit of a preview of what the answer is that we are going to have to divide and conquer, okay? So no, you as one human being are not going to be able to appoint a new FAA administrator that Elon Musk forced out. You and you as an individual are not going to be able to tackle the FAA crisis, tackle the OPM crisis, tackle like all of these things at once. Go, ICE, immigration, criminal, all of this stuff, and that's okay. Pick some of the things and trust that when we have mass mobilization, we are going to be addressing these things. Do what you can. That's the second principle, okay? Do what you can. You do not, and what you can do is enough, okay? Do what you can, and what you can do is enough. That's principle number 2. Now, and again, what can we? I'm gonna get there. Relax, take a breath. We're gonna get there. What is going on is so comprehensive, and I want to make sure that I'm giving you all as comprehensive an overview as I can so we can figure out, and you can have the tools to figure out how to lock in and how to mobilize. So that's number 1 and number 2. Now, someone said I should make a handbook. Maybe we will. Now, let's talk about a couple of things. I want to give an overview as to what is happening right now. Donald Trump, as we saw, was inaugurated several weeks ago. And who you saw behind him mattered. The people who stood behind Donald Trump at his inauguration are some of the people that are playing a major role in upholding and supporting what is going on. That is important to know because we need to know who are the folks that are responsible. And as we all saw, when Donald Trump was sworn in, he had several billionaires standing behind him. He had, of course, Elon Musk. He had Jeff Bezos. He had Mark Zuckerberg. You also had the CEOs of major corporations like TikTok and Apple, etc. These are people who are taking part in their own way, the same way that I'm telling you all to kind of divide and conquer. They are also dividing and conquer. They're acting very strategically, and they are each playing their own role, right? So the way that they're playing their own role, we can each be playing our own role, all right? Now, everyone's like, all this stuff. I'm gonna tell you all right now, if you cannot lock in for this comprehensive conversation, there's no like BuzzFeed, TikTok, 5 tips to dismantling fascism. We gotta lock in, okay? This is a lock-in conversation. So maybe people will be making TikTok compilations after this. Feel free, etc. But I have a lot here that I need to download to you all. All right. So a lot of you are asking about Elon. What do we do? What is, and that is the right question to be asking, because what Donald Trump has done is that he has completely given up his power and handed a lot of it over to Elon Musk. Elon Musk has appointed some teenagers and some people in their early 20s into essentially trying to raid federal government systems, including sensitive and classified information at the U.S. Department of Treasury. They are doing this. I want to tell you their story. Their stories that they're doing this and they're just like wholesale, as we saw, freezing federal programs and the Trump administration tried doing this through an executive order, freezing federal programs, freezing federal financing. That's why they went for the U.S. Department of Treasury. They're going for the money first. They are taking data. We are also hearing preliminary reports that they are potentially stealing that data and downloading it for private use, which of course is alarming, okay? This moment is scary, but we need to go in eyes wide open, all right? The paralysis as a response to fear is understandable, but we have to acknowledge what's happening and then we're gonna get somewhere, okay? They are taking access to the Treasury Department. They are firing career level federal employees. And I want you to know that there are 2 broad categories of federal workers. There are political appointees. Those are the people, as you can imagine, who are, when a president changes, when a new president is elected, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, they can appoint a whole slew of federal workers. Those are known as political appointees. Then there are career professionals. These are people who are not political. These are people who have spent 10, 20, 30, 40 years of their lives managing the administration of Medicare payments, of Social Security checks, of science research in how we find cures for diseases, from everything from cancer to diabetes, from our national energy systems. Our air traffic controllers are career professionals. They are not, a new president can't just get elected and snap their fingers and politically appoint an air traffic controller, because that requires years of training. And these are what are known as federal career workers. What is alarming about this moment, one of the things that they're doing is that they're going after money and they're going after people, okay? They're going after money there we go, sorry about that. They're going after money with the U.S. Treasury Department, and then they're going after people, which is known as OPM. You're going to be hearing OPM a lot. That's the Office of Personnel Management. And by the way, again, this stuff is important because one of the most important things that you can do in an environment and a time like this is to educate yourself. Knowing what is going on is not the same thing as reading a headline, okay? Knowing how things work, political education. This stuff is important because you can't do anything if you don't know where the vulnerabilities are and understand the big picture, okay? So I'm gonna get to all of your questions, but pump the brakes, okay? Breathe. Now, once again, two areas. They're going after the money with the U.S. Treasury Department, and they're going after the people, which is OPM, Office of Personnel Management, the federal career appointees. It is normal for a president to come in and to largely dismiss a lot of the previous administration's political appointees. They have the right to do that. What Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing is that they're going in and they are gutting the career professionals who have legal protections, who have decades of experience, and we will say they are playing with fire in doing that. Why are they playing with fire? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I represent LaGuardia Airport. It's in my district, not too far. So I represent LaGuardia Airport. Unsurprisingly, a lot of the neighborhoods around airports are filled with workers for those airports. So I know a decent amount about airports, air traffic control, flights, etc. These are kind of the weird things that happen when you're a member of Congress. You become like experts in these very niche things that affect your community. So many of my workers, many of my constituents who are workers at LaGuardia and also who serve JFK Airport, are experiencing and seeing what is happening up close. All of this stuff matters because it's connected. And when you see how it's connected, you feel less overwhelmed because you start to see a central theme emerge, and it doesn't feel like you have to tackle 100 things. It starts to feel like you're tackling a handful of things, okay? So you have this OPM dismissal and federal freezing. Last week, and also in the last 2 weeks, Donald Trump, 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump gets sworn in. Elon Musk then puts pressure on both Donald Trump and applies political pressure to dismiss the FAA, the Federal Aviation Commission, or rather the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administrator. They put pressure, Elon Musk put pressure to dismiss the FAA administrator. Now, why did he do that? Theme, okay? Elon Musk put pressure on him because the FAA administrator was advocating for, I believe, either fines or other sorts of punitive measures on Elon Musk because of violations that they were doing over at SpaceX around safety. So Elon pressures the Trump administration and forces the dismissal of an FAA administrator. That's part number one. Then a week later, or a couple of days later, the Trump administration, through OPM, through Elon Musk, through all these people, then send this ham-fisted letter out to virtually every federal employee, including some of the workers at LaGuardia Airport, and including virtually almost every air traffic controller in the United States, saying, we want you to leave your job. And we are going to offer you a quote-unquote buyout, which is not a buyout, mind you, and whose legality is highly questionable, and their ability to even uphold to their promise is, virtually none at all, saying, we want to push out every federal worker, including air traffic controllers. And what happens? What do we see? In an environment where air traffic controllers are already extremely strained, we do not have enough air traffic controllers in the United States. This has been a long rolling crisis in this country. And the reason we don't have air traffic controllers is because Republicans have cut budgets for training, for investment, for the federal pipeline and procuring air traffic control. That job, as we know, is not a joke. You can make one mistake and hundreds of people can be dead. But it has been taken seriously enough that we have not had a significant airline crash in this way in, I believe, since 2009. Anyways, all of this is to say is that they then push all these air traffic controllers and give them all a letter saying it's time for you to go. And also, what happens? Now we have an initial plane crash that has occurred. When we mess with federal government systems, lives are at stake. And this rhetoric that Elon Musk and MAGA and whatever have made in ginning up all of this conspiratorial mentality in order to get people to think that none of this matters and it can all be gutted is designed for exactly this kind of outcome. At the end of the day, the United States federal government is responsible for some of the most sensitive, broad-based, and important infrastructure, not just in the country, but in the world, okay? So this is what they are doing. Why are they doing it? Why are they doing it? You have not just OPM, but then you have, for example, Elon Musk talking about USAID, and he's like, we're going to dismantle USAID. He then also posts today, and this gives you a hint, he then also posts today about a very specific federal program at the Treasury, which is known as Direct File. Direct File, if you go on my rep page, if you go out to, this is my personal account, but if you go to my Rep AOC account, one of the pinned posts actually is about Direct File, because we spent years standing up to the lobbyists at TurboTax and H&R Block who take your money every year for you to file your own damn taxes with the federal government. And we wanted you to be able to do that for free. You can do it and have the option of doing it for free. Now, what does that have to do with this present moment? Well, I find it very interesting that it's tax season. January 1st just happened. A lot of people just got their tax return forms. And between now and April is the time where these multi-billion-dollar corporations, or the corporations that own them, or multi-million-dollar corporations, depending on who you are about to make a bunch, or could stand to lose a bunch of money, because the public finally won a free option that rolled out last year and also rolled out a year and a half ago. Now, all of a sudden, very interestingly, Elon Musk posts that he's quote unquote deleting the direct file program. They are not doing this because they care about you, obviously. They're not doing this because they care about this country. And they certainly are not doing this because they care about Republican voters. I will tell you that much right now. Because if they cared about everyday people and everyday working people, the first targets for their little raid, which is illegal, we'll get to that in a second, would not be the most essential services that can actually give people a break. They would not be going after Medicaid. They would not be going after your direct file. They would not be taking that and deleting that option, the free option for you, right before April 1st, right in the time before April 1st when you're supposed to be filing your taxes. Elon Musk is a billionaire raiding the US federal government for personal profit and for the profit of his friends. And so every single person that you saw standing behind Donald Trump at his inauguration is part of this. They may not be publicly vocal about it, but they sent a very strong message with their presence, okay? So don't let any of them act like, oh, I didn't know. Yes, they knew. Apple are in there. Apparently there's preliminary reporting that they might be rolling out Starlink, which is Elon Musk's firm, into iOS systems. You have Jeff Bezos, who runs the Washington Post, who refused and blocked, overrode their editorial board. They are controlling media, they are controlling digital communications, and they're doing all of this to prop up Trump so that they can personally profit, okay? That, at the core, is what is happening. Now, we see what's going on. What are we gonna do about it? All right, okay? And also, one more important thing. This is the most important thing. I want you all, one of the important lenses that I want you all to interpret all of this happening through is through a very important deadline that is happening in the federal government. And once you understand this, you will understand, and all of this chaos is going to start making sense, okay? Something very big is happening this year. And it's part of the structure around which all of this chaos is occurring. Because why is Elon Musk raiding the Treasury? Why are they suspending federal funding? Like, this goes beyond being a Democrat or a Republican. This is anarchy. This is just taking all this stuff over. So why at the core are we doing this? In addition to just sheer hatred, because as we see, Elon Musk, maybe you can take the boy out of apartheid, but you can't take apartheid out of the boy, apparently. He's out here doing Nazi salutes, so whatever. But in addition to a white supremacist, like whatever it is that they want to do, let's talk about, you always comes down to follow the money. There is a very important deadline that is happening this year. In 2017, Donald Trump and the Republican Party forced through one of the largest tax giveaways to the rich in modern American history. This was in 2017. We are talking about grotesque levels of tax cuts that they issued at that time. We're talking about CEOs and people being able to them proposing tax cuts on like tax write-offs on yachts and private jets, but most importantly, some of the most broad-based tax cuts for the rich and the 1% in this country that we have ever seen. Ever seen. That happened in 2017. So why is that important to today? Those tax cuts had a sunset period. And that sunset period occurs in 2025. 2025. So now we're here. And right now, what is happening is that all of these tax cuts that billionaires and millionaires have been just getting high off the hog on over the last couple of years are now about to run dry if they do not reauthorize them, if they do not extend them, and not only if they do not extend them, but ideally they want to add to them. Massive tax cuts for some of the largest corporations that exist in America and in the world. And so they have a massive thing at stake. So right now, their task is to extend these tax cuts. And what Elon Musk wants is for these tax cuts to not only be extended, but to apply to him in a larger way than ever before so that he can amass even more money than ever before. So what does that mean? The problem with extending, they have a little wrinkle in extending some of these massive structural giveaways to the wealthiest people in this country. And the problem is that they have to pay for it. They have to pay for it. These tax cuts are to the tune, the cost of these tax cuts are to the tune of about $4 trillion. $4 trillion. And so if the US federal government is about to, if these tax cuts for the wealthiest people are going to expire this year, and if those tax cuts are set to expire, and in order to extend them, you need to find $4 trillion, well, where do you look? Because historically, in this country, when you need to pay for something, you pay for it with taxes. And other small, other kind of alternative forms of revenue sources as well. I need to simplify, but I want to oversimplify. And especially when it comes to some of the core, most important systems, healthcare, education, etc., we have had a system where we tax progressively. Now, not in principle, not in terms of the political progressivism principle, but what it means is that the more money you make, the more you get taxed, quote unquote. We know that that's not how it works in practice, but in theory, that's how it should work, right? A billionaire should pay more in taxes than a secretary. And historically, not just billionaires, but also mass corporations, etc. That's how we keep the lights on. That's how we keep Medicare, Medicaid, the VA, public schools, it's through taxes. So if these tax cuts are going to cost $4 trillion and the government, and you're by definition not going to tax anyone else, not going to tax the rich in order to pay for it, then how are you going to pay and square that circle? There's two ways that you do that. One is that you tax the poor and you tax the working class and you tax the middle class. You raise taxes on that, which, by the way, they are proposing. I think if you make less than $300,000 or $350,000-ish, your taxes will be going up. And actually, the further below that number you make, the more your taxes are going to go up by. So, sorry, that keeps happening. If you're making $28,000, they want you to be paying way more in taxes, especially proportionately, than if you were making $150,000. But they are proposing all of our taxes to go up. That's one way. But guess what? That's not going to that doesn't make up the difference. It may make up a small bit, but it doesn't make up the difference. $4 trillion, you are not going to make that by taxing people who make $28,000 a year a little bit more. Doesn't make it up. Math doesn't square. So they're going to do that, but it's not enough. The second thing that they're going to go after are massive programming cuts, or the massive programming cuts, which we will get to in a minute. And the third thing that they propose is cutting waste. First of all, they tell you all of these stories about waste and government waste and Doge and whatever. First and foremost, understand that there is already a federal agency who is a watchdog on waste in the United States. That is known as the Government Accountability Office. So all of these people acting like, oh, we're going to set up an agency to identify waste, as though that's never been an idea before, take a number. These people, and I can tell you, in my experience, I have encountered many billionaires in my career. You all have seen many of those encounters in hearings, in other, forms of questioning, etc. I can tell you that this dude is probably one of the most unintelligent billionaires I have ever met or seen or witnessed. Which, you can probably even glean that from watching these people on TV. Anyways, all of that is to say is that they don't do their homework. Clearly, they're putting 19-year-olds in at the Treasury. This dude is not smart. And the danger in the lack of intelligence and the lack of expertise that Elon has. I mean, this guy is one of the most morally vacant, but also just least knowledgeable about these systems that we really know of. But the point is that what that means is that they're going to hit a button inevitably. They are going to hit a button and things can go sideways. We already saw that last week when they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna freeze everything. That sounds so cool, let's do that. They hit the freeze button and then Medicaid portals across the United States got suspended through that EO. And they tried to make up for it and be like, oh, that has nothing to do with all of it. Really? You're gonna freeze all federal programs and then the Medicaid portal suspended and you think people are gonna think that's not connected? I mean, I know they think people are stupid, but it's genuinely just be so for real right now. Anyways, so what they're trying to do is that under the guise of waste, they are going to try to cut and gut some of the most essential federal programs that we've got. In fact, how do we know this? Because the Republican majority and their budget had a sensitive internal document that got leaked a couple of weeks ago. And I can tell you that I read through it. And they identified bit by bit everything from the mortgage interest tax deduction to, which I raised a couple of weeks ago, to Medicaid itself. They have identified as wanting to eliminate in order to pay for Elon Musk's tax breaks, Jeff Bezos's tax breaks, Mark Zuckerberg's tax breaks, and other giveaways and other sorts of giveaways to the wealthiest people and corporations in this country. And the biggest one, lock in everybody, okay? The biggest one that they are going after is Medicaid, okay? They have Medicaid in their sights and they want to cut $2 trillion. Remember? They need to find $4 trillion. And they've got maybe, this is $4 trillion. They maybe have one knuckle in tax increases in terms of paying for that. They maybe have one knuckle in tax increases on middle class and low income people. You're just not going to get that money for it. And they do not have, I mean, you can cut every wasteful practice and you're not going to get close. Because by the way, what are they not going to include in their government waste assessments? Take a big guess. Defense spending. One of the biggest areas of federal expenditure and waste that we see. I sat on the oversight committee, y'all. I have seen defense contractors price gouge and loot the public in such inordinate ways. And you all can tell me, service members who are tuned in right now, you all see it all the time. Like the how a lot of things don't add up because it's defense contractors who are making a killing. And just so you know, when you see these big tech people, many of them are also defense contractors. Elon Musk gets his money from defense. SpaceX, they put all these slick branding on it, and they like to brand themselves as tech and as like all of this other stuff. But a lot of them get their money through defense contracts. You hear me? And so when they talk about waste, in one of the areas where there is evidence for some of the largest amount of federal waste, because mind you, the Pentagon has not passed an audit. The Pentagon fails their audit all the time and has yet to pass an audit. But this is where they're getting their bread buttered. So they want you to think that it's the viejita who's getting Medicaid, who's getting her insulin paid for on Medicaid, that is the waste, because what they don't want you to do is to look at US defense spending, particularly defense contractors, and even in that under area of defense contractors, their defense contracts. Microsoft, Amazon, a lot of these AI initiatives, defense contracts, which by the way should not be legal. And we saw this. We saw some of the early use of AI being used in war, which in a way should absolutely be illegal. Robots make mistakes, and if you accidentally bomb a building or just bomb a building indiscriminately without proper human oversight, which by the way, we saw initially tested on Palestinians in Gaza, but that's not going to stop there. If you allow that to continue, it can continue. So anyways, what they don't want you to look at is their defense contracts. Also, Amazon, Microsoft, their integrations with ICE and immigration as well. I'm going to get to these things, but we have to lay out the full landscape, okay? So if we want to know what the motivation is, why this is happening, understand that it is deeply tied to the deadline that billionaires and the rich are confronting right now this year in 2025. And what they want to do is suspend the actual assistance that you receive, whether it is through education, whether it's through healthcare, etc. They want to suspend that and gut that in order to finance their own public looting and public coffers, okay? So when you see these plane crashes, when you see the disruptions with air traffic controllers and things like this, or when you see all this stuff that's happening at the FAA, understand again, this happened, and what happened, the FAA administrator was on leave. He had retired. Why? Because he had challenged SpaceX and wanted to find SpaceX. So understand, when you see all this stuff happening, it's not all random overwhelm. It's about the money. Immigration, these massive expansions on immigration, they want you to believe that they're only going after criminals. They're going after everybody. They even arrested Puerto Ricans. They're going after everybody. And understand that this is how indiscriminate they are being. And they are doing this because also, you know who finances a lot of Republican campaigns? The private prison industry. They know that they actually can't deport all of these people at once in one go. And what do when you grab someone off the street but you can't deport them for a long time? You build private prison camps. And this is all, we already saw them start to do that. And this is, especially with passage of certain legislation, this is what it's set to do. Okay? So understand the central motivations here. This is about preying on working class people and stoking racial division so that working people turn against one another in order to vacuum and suck up what little is left of American public infrastructure and life and hand it over to Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and all these corporations, etc. Okay? It's important to lay that out. Now, what do we do? Okay? What do we do about it? There are just like, okay? I know y'all are I can already hear, but just lock in for a second. Just like these problems can seem comprehensive and also overwhelming and complex, understand that we outnumber them. We outnumber them, okay? The people outnumber the 1%. The people, and not even just, and it's not just about 1% and 99, it's not just about that too. Also, everyday people of all sorts of income brackets also overwhelm the number of the corrupt, okay? Understand our strategic advantages in this moment. We outnumber them. Do not forget that. We outnumber them so dramatically that they have to try to control media and communication channels and apps, etc., because they want to and need to invoke docility, passivity in the masses in order for them to get away with what they're doing. Even before this most recent movie season, I would always make the comparison to The Wizard of Oz. But so like, it's not just a wicked thing, okay? Understand that authoritarians are kind of like the wizard in The Wizard of Oz. They rely not on their actual power. They rely on their perceived power. So, principle number one in what you can do is that when one of these things comes to your backyard, when it actually, like when it comes to you, and I will give examples, but when it comes to you, when it does, you can resist. And what that happens over millions of people is that you generate enough friction that they cannot go as fast as they want to go, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples that have already been working. Let's start with immigration and ICE. When people say, what can we do? You can do the things that apply to you. In my community, we are a heavily immigrant community. And so ICE raids deeply affect and disrupt our community. And the prospect of ICE raids deeply disrupt and threaten our community. So, number one, if you live in a community with a lot of immigrants, know your rights. That's one tangible thing you can do that I want you to do. And I'm going to go through what that means. And that means know your rights if you are a US citizen as well. Okay? Here's one way that we're going to create some friction in this system. Okay? Tom Homan, who's directing a lot of these ICE operations nationally, etc. He went on TV practically crying. This dude was whining his ass off because ICE went into the city of Chicago, and Chicago had prepared for them. Community organizers, activists, and their mayor and local elected officials who were solid on this issue, they educated the city on their legal rights. Because what ICE tries to do is that they rely on people not knowing their rights in order to enter buildings, in order to search workplaces, etc. So when you know your rights, you are able to tell them no, and they do walk away. So you need to know your rights. If ICE comes to you as an American citizen, still assert your rights, because what you can do is protect people around you and also make sure that you are slowing down this system. The slower they operate, the less they can break. You hear me? This is why this is strategically important. The slower they operate, the less they can break. And so know your rights. If ICE comes to your workplace, if ICE comes to your door, you do not have to open the door. You ask them for a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. ICE very often tries to show you some official looking paper in order to intimidate people and to let them in. Again, remember, they rely on the perception of power. No. You don't just get some paper and let them in. You look for a judicial warrant. You look for a judge's signature on that piece of paper. If there is not a judge's signature on that piece of paper, you do not have to open the door. Number two, you can ask them to leave. If they do not procure a warrant, you can ask them to leave. You can stay silent. If they have detained you, you can say, I would like to remain silent. You invoke your right. You do not have to share personal information. They want to know what your immigration status is. Even if you're a U.S. citizen, if they want to ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? You tell them, I don't have to answer that question. You tell them, I do not have to answer that question. You do not have to. They ask you where you were born. I don't have to answer that question. They ask for your immigration status. I do not have to answer your question. They do not, unless you are being officially detained, if they have a judicial warrant. And by the way, you do not have to sign anything. And if they want to keep asking you questions, you say, I would like to speak to my attorney. In New York and California, you have a right to an attorney, including if you are undocumented or anything. You would say, I would like an attorney. Or if you are outside of the states of New York or California, you can say, I would like to speak to an attorney. And you can get your own attorney. Or you can procure your own attorney. So you say, I want to talk to a lawyer. Know your rights. Use them if you are a citizen. Use them if you are not a U.S. citizen, green card holder, whatever it may be. And also, one simple thing you can do is share your rights. Share know your rights information. How do you do that? Two things. You can go to my Rep AOC account if you want, and there's a slide with know your rights. If you want to go grassroots style, you can use mine. They're ACLU, a bunch of people have them. Print them out, hand them out. Hand them out to people. Or if you sign, again, this is like not a plug. You can Google this in lots of places, but one thing that we're presently working on is that if you're on my newsletter or if you sign on to my newsletter, we are working on printable PDFs that we're going to soon email out to our whole newsletter list so that you can print it out. You can tape it up in storefronts. You can drop palm cards in small businesses. If you are local to New York City, we are going to be having kind of volunteer events where we're going to go bodega by bodega, dropping palm cards so that people can know their rights. And the slower they go, the less they can break, okay? That's one example. Number two, in some of these federal purges, with what they're trying to do, they want to send you a little letter saying, oh, we're going to offer you a buyout. Don't take it. Don't take it. don't take the buyout. You have about 3 days, like all those federal workers that got that got those notices. And of course, you know, these decisions are personal. The decisions are ultimately up to you. But my opinion is that this is a bunch of BS. And what they want everyone to do is to comply in advance. Do not comply in advance. Make them make you. Make them make you. And make them, if they're committing crimes, make them make you. Because we are going to win. I want you to understand right now, we're going to go through an ugly, ugly period. But move in the faith that we are going to win. Okay? It is, nobody knows what is going to happen between now and then, but winning and prevailing is a decision. It is a choice. It's not, oh, what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. It's, what am I going to dedicate myself to? And so it can be actions small, it can be actions large. I'm giving you a small action, a tiny action. If you are exhausted and you don't have any energy at all, the one thing I want you to do is to look up your rights, for you to know your rights in case ICE shows up to your workplace. Just Google it, understand it, practice it, go on Rep AOC. If you have no energy at all, just do that. Just Google your rights. If you've got some energy, if you're itching to mobilize and you're in a community like mine, pick up some palm cards or print out some stuff on your own and take it to a local bodega and say, hey, can I post this up? Okay? That's level 2, right? There are actions you could take at every level. If you want to do even more, there are community organizations that you can engage in. We need to be little grains of sand in the large gears of this machine. And so please do not fall for the illusion or the lie that any action is too small. There is no action too small. In fact, because there are so many of us, when millions of people do tiny things, we can disrupt these systems, okay? So those are 2 key things. Now, let's level up. Let's zoom out a little bit in terms of what else we can do. Well, Donald Trump did something very interesting. In case, in order for us to understand the political landscape, Republicans didn't just win the White House, as we know. Republicans also won majorities in the Senate and majorities in the House. And what is happening right now is that Republicans are rolling over. People are saying, where's Congress? Where's Congress? Congress, I'll get to Democrats in another section here. But Congress itself, the reason Congress as an institution is not doing anything is because Republicans hold the keys to both the House and the Senate. So if the House is going to do something, you need the Republican speaker to make the choice to do it. The Senate, if the Senate is going to do something, the Senate has a Republican majority that holds the keys to that as well. So there are 2 strategies that we have in terms of the Senate and in terms of the House. I'm going to start with the House. The House has 435 members, but the Republicans won the majority, but that majority is very, very slim right now. I think it's about 4. I believe it's a majority of about 4. Even with 4 Republicans making the difference between a Democratic House and a Republican majority House, Donald Trump still decided to appoint several of them to his administration, which has dramatically reduced temporarily the Republican voting majority in the House. Those people that he appointed are tried to appoint Matt Gaetz, but Matt Gaetz resigned when he was named, when Donald Trump was going to appoint him, and then the Senate blocked it. But still, there's a vacancy in Matt Gaetz's seat. There's a vacancy in Representative Waltz's seat. and there's a vacancy here in New York with Elise Stefanik's seat. 2 of those seats, Walsh and Gates, are in the state of Florida, and they are strolling their way to a special election. Now, that special election, I believe, is happening on April 1st in the state of Florida. We need to have a show of elevated numbers. We should have a show of elevated numbers in those 2 special elections. Now, people are going to say, oh, she's sending you on a wild goose chase. These are strongly Republican districts, but Washington and decision makers often look at the margins of these results to try to glean how people are feeling in this time. And first and foremost, the level of breakneck speed and not just speed, the level of just breaking that this administration and that Elon Musk is doing right now does have the power to transcend party. It does have the power to transcend party. And if a historically 30 plus Republican seat, if a seat that normally goes to Republicans by 20 points or 30 points, then goes to Republic, even if they still win, but if it goes down to 10 points, they know that they are in deep trouble. And why does that matter? Because a lot of these people only respond to one thing, which is whether they can hold on to power or not. And one of the reasons we're in this situation is because a lot of Republicans were more afraid of a primary election, losing a primary election, than they were in actually advocating for their people. And if you want evidence for that, just know that these Medicaid cuts that they're going for are actually going to affect rural Americans some of the most. Some of the places that vote the reddest stand to be hurt the most by what Republicans are trying to do. And so understand, we're talking about rural hospital closures, we're talking about all sorts of infrastructure, any of the basic services that a lot of rural communities who are already underserved, all these communities that are already underserved. So I'm not saying that getting in the game with these is going 100% to change the outcome. But it may, because we are in an unprecedented time. An unprecedented time can mean, of course, many bad things happen, but it can also mean that unpredictable things can happen, and unpredictable things can often go our way. I was elected in the first Trump administration, and nobody ever thought that I had a prayer in order to win. I was a waitress. I was challenging the head of a political machine who was supposed to be the next Speaker of the House. They spent $3 million against me while I was wiping down tables. And we won. Why? Because an unpredictable window has opened. Do not comply in advance. You try anyway. We try, and they want to flood the zone. We can flood the zone with people. So those April 1st special elections, you can take a look at those. But importantly, in New York, Elise Stefanik's seat is open. And, those Florida seats, we can start mobilizing there. We'll start exercising our organizing muscle there. But we're doing that in order to build the larger infrastructure and power that we need. Elise Stefanik's seat is going to be open, and there's going to be more time. That special election is not happening on April 1st. And so what that means is that New Yorkers, we can focus on the special election for Elise Stefanik's seat, and we can go for it, okay? We can go for it. We need to try. I'm talking about this time is crazy. We need to jiggle every damn door handle in this place to see what opens up. I don't want to hear, oh, we can't do that. Oh, that's impossible. That's called consenting in advance. So when your mind says it's all over, like we might as well, no. You are consenting in advance. Do not consent in advance. Do not be discouraged in temporary defeats. We keep going anyway. Do it anyway. When we are relentless, they will fatigue. They will fatigue. They can only hold this up for so long. Draw them out. Draw them out. Okay? So we can mobilize electorally. We can mobilize in community organizing, whatever your calling is. Some people don't like electoral organizing. Then I want you to be running a Know Your Rights training. Or I want you to be sending out palm cards. Or I want you to be Googling your own rights, depending on your energy level. But electorally, we need to go get them, okay? These special elections are opportunities. And I'm not just talking about federally. It is time for us to kick up state legislatures, okay? Iowa just had a special election. That district was supposed to be Republican plus 20 something, and they lost it. They lost it. This was supposed to be a community. It went 20 or 30, it went double digits to Trump. They lost the special. Do not say things are impossible in this time, okay? We jiggle in this house, we jiggle every door handle to find an opportunity. You got to try 100 times sometimes to make one work. It's worth it. It's worth it. All right? So that's one. Now, what are Democrats doing? So those are some things on what you can do. Now, let's talk about what are Democrats doing. Democrats. As many of you know, my relationship with the Democratic Party is, let's call it an interesting one, right? I came in, for people who may not know, I came in to office not just by beating a Republican. I came into office by taking on the Democratic establishment and taking on a very entrenched political machine in New York City, and defeated a lot of that in order to get elected to office. And so I say this because I am an elected Democrat in Congress, but also I have I think sometimes a certain independent or little bit of a removed perspective in order between examining how the party is operating and also my direct relationship to the people. And so I've always kind of had this like in the middle type of relationship, and it's always awkward, right? Like, I'm an elected official, so everyday people, it's a different kind of relationship, but also I'm also viewed with skepticism sometimes within my own party, or sometimes historically even hostility from my own party. But at the end of the day, that's like I'm here, and also on top of that, I don't accept any lobbyist money. I am financed like by everyday people, and the average donation to my campaign is like $16, $20, depending on the day. And so that also means that I am not as attached to lobbyist influence, and also just kind of like the traditional ways that Washington works. I say all of this because I want you to know that when I'm about to talk to you about what Democrats are doing right now, and what we are doing, what we may not be doing, it's done with that perspective in mind, which is that I'm capable of stepping out of the party and looking at it because of both how I got here and the fact that I rely on the support of everyday people. But also, it's also, though, in my communications with you all, I do have a level of insight where I can share with you what I see going on. And so there's two sides to this coin. So I want to let you know what Democrats can be doing right now and what we're starting to see some mobility on. So point number one, a lot of people say, where are Democrats right now? I don't know where Democrats are right now. There's like two things can be true at the same time, right? Number one, I want you to know the timing with which they did this. One of the reasons why you see, I think, either a delayed response or why it's harder to see where Democrats are right now is because Donald Trump waited until Congress adjourned session in order to start this, for lack of a better word, shit show. And so literally what happened is that Congress is in session for votes, and then they adjourn session in order to go back to their communities, do town halls, do like tours and stuff like that. So it was almost like on the clock when Congress was adjourned and everyone got on planes to go to their districts and their communities across the country. That's when they started hitting the shit show and all this stuff. So when people are like, why aren't we in the buildings in Washington, D.C.? I like, your member of Congress is in your district, right? That is changing tomorrow. Tomorrow, Congress is going back into session, and you should be seeing a lot more activity. And I would anticipate you're going to see a lot more activity to that end, at least in terms of the House. The Senate sometimes has a different schedule, but the House has the vast majority of people. So I would anticipate seeing more of that kind of activity. Now, in terms of substantive things that we can do, the Trump administration is currently trying to get their nominees approved and voted on. No Democrat should be voting to advance Trump's nominees while all of this stuff is going on. There has to be a political price to pay, and we have a responsibility as a party to block everything that is happening while they're setting a literal match to the federal government and giving 19-year-olds classified access, potentially classified access to the U.S. Treasury Department. So we need to start blocking every single procedural advancement on the Senate side in order to do that. And we need to be a pain in the ass. And a lot of times, Democrats in the Senate, in the name of ceremony and fake history, in the case of the filibuster, it's fake history that many of them cite, and what have you, like gentlemen's agreements. The Senate loves their gentlemen's agreements, which is to say it's not like rule breaking, but it's just like these kind of handshake practices that they have. We have to stop playing nice in the Senate and block every damn thing that we can. Do not give votes to the nominees. And by the way, I want you to look. Do not assume that your senator is not going to vote for these nominees. If you are a Democrat, or if you are a person rather that has a Democratic senator, give them a call and tell them, I do not want you to vote to advance or approve any of these nominees while all this stuff is going on. Please tell them. Do not assume that just because you have a Democratic senator, they're going to, that they're just going to vote no. Trust me. You can look up any of these votes recently. Even at the Defense Department, the nominee Hesketh, you should even see some of this questioning from people coming forward about not just sexual harassment and with accounts of this, accounts of drunkenness on the job, all of this stuff. You still had a Democrat who voted for him. So do not assume that just because you have a Democratic senator that they're gonna vote no. Like, even with some of the most unqualified people, you call them and you tell them, I want you to vote no. I want you to block these appointees until, like, while all this stuff is happening, okay? Use our leverage. Make them fight for every single step. The slower they go, the less they can break, okay? We're bringing things down. Now, in terms of the House, what are some of the things that we are doing that can be done? Earlier today, the leader in the House of House Democrats, how do I say this? The leader of Democrats in the House is a gentleman from Brooklyn known as Hakeem Jeffries. He is the House Minority Leader, the House Democrats leader. He sent out a message, a list today with 10 central objectives in terms of things that they're doing. And it's important to recognize what we can do and what we cannot do today. Someone said a bartender congresswoman talking about qualifications. Hell yeah, I'm going to talk to you about my qualifications, because I know what it's like to be a working class person, and I got elected as the youngest woman in American history to Congress with my knowledge and my ability to organize and connect with my community. So when any one of these people can win an election with that kind of a background and you don't take lobbyist money, then you can give me a call. But until then, these people are seem to be apparently having 3 martini lunches thinking that they can run and command the respect of the Defense Department. So give me a break. Anyways, back to regularly scheduled programming. The leader of House Democrats is Hakeem Jeffries. He sent out a kind of a bulletin today with 10 objectives. Now, remember that theme that I brought up earlier today: divide and conquer. So we're not going to get overwhelmed. We are going to educate ourselves on who is in charge of what, okay? So one thing that we expect to see, and that we expect to see, is that House Democrats and legislation is going to be advanced this week to implement mechanisms to help block some of this infiltration that we're having at the U.S. Treasury Department. Also today, as a preview, there were some Democrats that are the heads, the Democratic chair, or not chairs, but what is known as the number 2 ranking members. So just so you know, in the House, the reason why who has majority control of the House matters is because the party with majority control also controls all the committees. So it's not just that you have more votes, it's that Republicans will control all the legislation that comes to the floor. Republicans control like all of this stuff. So people are saying, oh, Dems will not pass stop. Please understand, again, do not consent in advance. When Republicans have a majority that is this big right now, about 2 people, those 2 people that need to win re-election really, really care about being reelected, okay? So if we put pressure on, I can name one of them right now in the state of New York. We have Mike Lawler in Westchester County. This is a district that was won by Joe Biden. This was a district that was carried. There are Republican House members that are in districts that Joe Biden carried in 2020. These are districts with enough Democrats in them and enough people who vote Democrat in them that they can be unseated, okay? Those people do care about what you think and how pissed off you are. So if you can you don't need to get 100 Republicans to do something. You can put enough pressure on 4 or 5. And again, this issue is not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about our country, y'all. Like, This is not, listen, I have ideas and I have principles that I feel very strongly about. Yeah, I believe every American should be guaranteed healthcare in this country. Sue me, okay? Like, oh wow, I believe that people should have a living wage. Oh no, fine. Like, recoil in horror at my big crazy ideas that people should be alive and cared for in this country, fine. But this is not that. This is basic, keep the lights on, follow the law type stuff. And these are things that Republicans can lose elections over. And if we start sending the message that they can do that starting now, then we can start getting some traction and some momentum. Because if you think government is like a George Foreman grill and you can just set it and forget it, I regret to inform you that that is not how participatory democracy works. So we gotta lock in and we gotta start getting people quaking in their electoral boots, okay? And so we have to start doing Westchester County. If you're in Westchester County, if you're in Rockland County, if you're out here, I'm gonna need you to start making some phone calls saying, what are you doing about this, okay? To your representative. If you have a Republican representative, you should be making a phone call. Oh, they don't listen, it doesn't matter. Don't consent in advance. Don't consent in advance. This is how it works. Oh, they don't listen, they don't pick up the phone, they don't care, they're gonna vote the other way anyway. They need to know you are paying attention. They need to know that you are pissed off, okay? If they don't think that you're pissed off, if they don't think that you're not paying attention, they're gonna go faster. Even if your call makes them think twice, it is effective. And I will tell you, listen, I have sat on the steps of the Capitol when there have been people protesting and yelling at members as they walk in. And the thing that members do is that they ignore them and they keep walking and they act like their ears are full of cement and that they can't hear. I can tell you they can hear, and I can tell you that it affects them. They put on a face that it doesn't. Or they might tell Elon Musk is one of the thinnest skinned MFers I have ever encountered in my life. That dude, you can get him twisted by looking at him. Like, he is so insecure, which is why he's a white supremacist. Like, these people rely on this ideology because they need something to hang their hat of superiority on. Clearly, money isn't enough for this dude. He needs he needs to cling on to this to feel better than, because he has a complex, all right? Like, this is deeply psychological. This is what happens when, like, you don't go to therapy, dude. Like, this is what happens, whatever. They got their own personal problems, and they're taking it out on society. But the point is that that's also how these systems interact, right? Like, these people need to feel or exert some kind of power. And that is why the last principle is that you do not give them your fear. Do not give them your fear. Do not give them your anxiety. Do not give them your panic. This is a monster that eats fear. This is a monster that eats and feeds on your anxiety, on your paralysis, on your fear, and that is what sustains them. Don't give it to them. Yes, this time is scary. Do not give them your panic. ICE is another example. The actual activity that ICE is doing is relatively limited, especially compared to the rhetoric and what they're showing on TV. They're making it look way worse. It's bad, but they're making it look bigger. And the reason they are doing that is because people are going to take actions on their own. They believe that when you show it to be really big, that people will consent in advance. And I can tell you, in my community, there are people that are in a heartbreaking fashion doing that. They are pulling their kids out of school. So our babies are not getting educated. They're pulling their kids out of school because they're scared. Keep your kids in school if you can. If you can. Every situation is different. Everyone's life is different. But if you can, keep your babies in school. You need them in school. There are people that are already planning to pre-separate their family and leave their children with other guardians here in the United States, and the parents are choosing to leave on their own volition, because in the US, the law is such that they would have to wait 10 years in another country. And so they're saying, well, if I'm going to get deported, in order to avoid that, I'm going to leave on my own. I'm going to leave my baby here. And then when my baby turns 18, then we can try to reunite legally. And these are heartbreaking decisions that are happening. Absolutely heartbreaking decisions. But they are, these are heavy, serious decisions that are happening in response to this image and this fear that they're trying to project out here. So all that is to say, do not give them your fear. On top of the things functionally, let's go back to what Democrats are doing. Another thing that Democrats are doing is that we are coordinating, right? We do not have majorities in the House, and we do not have majorities in the Senate. Especially in the House, that means that our ability to investigate, to launch investigations, etc., are very limited, because we don't hold the gavels to the committees that would direct a lot of this legislation or investigations. And so what we can do is that we can partner across state and other sorts of governments in order to pursue strategies, right? And so, for example, the House, with response to the federal freeze, we cannot sue the president. We don't have the legal standing to sue the president. And people say, oh, courts, it doesn't matter. Do not consent in advance. I don't want to hear that stuff doesn't matter. This is what the headlines are trying to get you to do, right? Guess what? He signed an executive order saying, I'm ending birthright citizenship. Did birthright citizenship end in this country? No, it didn't. It got torn down in a matter of seconds. Not seconds, but you know what I mean. Legislatively, in a legislative context. It got knocked down. He did it for the headline. He did it for just the buzz, okay? The courts still do matter. They file injunctions. It can stop things. So the point for some of this stuff is to get you to think that something is happening when it's not. When it's not. So that executive order went nowhere. There are 20 different lawsuits in response to these executive orders that Trump announced that are working their way, and they're heading to court. And if you run an organization and you got a letter from the federal government saying you need to do this, that, and the other to comply with those executive orders, keep an eye on those lawsuits and make sure that these things can happen, and make sure that, again, to slow down is to stop their damage. Now, all of that, we also have the heads of the Democratic heads of the major committees that are being affected, the Judiciary Committee, Appropriations, Oversight, Budget, are going to be providing individual updates. So if you're asking, what about USAID? Well, we will talk about USAID. But what is happening about USAID? I want you to think about the Democratic head of what is known as HVAC, the House Foreign Affairs Committee. That's Gregory Meeks, also a New Yorker. As well as not just him, but just look up the Democrats who are on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And if you look at those folks, they will tell you what we are doing on each individual issue. Judiciary, appropriations and budget when it comes to the money stuff. There is stuff that's going on, okay? So we have 20 different lawsuits in court. many of those people went to these buildings today. They went to those buildings today. People are saying, I want Democrats to show up at buildings. Democrats showed up at buildings today. You can look it up. Gregory Meeks, Jamie Raskin, Ilhan Omar, they were there, okay? And when House comes back into session tomorrow, I would anticipate you seeing a lot more physical kind of activity going on as well. So one of the important things to do is that I want you to get familiar with who's on the committees in Congress, and I want you to familiarize yourself. Like, level 1 is like, call your congressman. Level 2 is know what committee your congressman's on, or congresswoman, sorry, member of Congress, or any person, any gender. Y'all know what I mean. You're a member of Congress. And once we start being able to map these things out, again, having knowledge of these things is incredibly important in navigating and making the decisions we need on how to expend our energy. So we are starting there. But I know that this was a lot. I know I dumped a lot for you. And again, your assignments are to call your senator. I know, call your, if you have a Democratic senator, call your Democratic senator. Call your senator, period. But there is no person that should say, oh, my senator is so-and-so, they don't need my call. Call your senator and tell them you don't want them approving Trump's cabinet picks while all this chaos is going on. Pump the brakes. Number 2, if you don't want to call your senator, I want you to look up, print out some Know Your Rights cards, and I want me and my team, we were out there, and my team was out there on Roosevelt Avenue, and we were taping Know Your Rights cards to food carts, to businesses. We were putting them in bodegas. Do that. Tape it up. If you don't even want to do that, if you're too tired, just look up your own rights. Go on my Instagram page or go sign up for my newsletter in here, because we're going to be sending out printable PDFs for everybody in, shortly, and you can keep an eye out for that. And if you have a Republican member near you, I would like you to volunteer, to start volunteering now. Make the commitment now to help win the nearest swing seat to you. And not just winning the seat, not just an election, but being consistently engaged, calling them, seeing them, engaging them. What do you do about it? What do you feel about it? And put them on the record. Make them answer for what is going on. I'm telling you, it matters. We are in the Wizard of Oz. They want you to think that it's this big green floating head that is too big to confront, when they are little men with little fragile, or rather big, fragile egos. And their feelings are easily hurt, and they are also easily shaken. And they overcompensate by saying, oh, we're gonna, whatever, with shows of force or mocking people. Or, this is the thing. This is why they punch down. Elon punches down because he can't punch across. And then he wants to make, these people want you to think that, that the lady selling churros on the corner is part of a mass conspiracy. No, dude. It's the big corporations. They're trying to distract you from what they're doing. And so stay focused, take a breath, understand what I laid out when it comes to USAID. There's also going to be actions on there as well. We are seeing Marco Rubio did the opening silo. We can use the Senate votes as leverage to halt what is happening at USAID. And I would anticipate, because they got up to all this, they waited until Congress flew out for the week in order to start all this nonsense. And when everyone is flying back tomorrow, you can anticipate a lot more activity. And so I think that I've given you all enough. Understand that your everyday small actions matter. They matter. Letting someone know that they're safe with you matters. Showing up matters. Asking someone that you know if they know their rights matters. And these people feed off our fear, and they feed off our apathy, and most of all, they feed off of the nihilism, this disease, this cynicism of this notion that nothing we do matters and nothing we do makes an impact, so that we don't do it. Don't listen to them. This is a mentality thing that they are coming after first and foremost. That is why they are trying to control your attention. They are trying to control your attitudes and beliefs, and they are trying to control your emotional state, right? They want you consumed with and paying attention to their narrative and headline. They want to make sure that that you feel overwhelmed. They want you to feel like nothing matters so that you don't try, because if you do try, there are times where you will win. So they don't want you to try at all. Try, okay? And again, they want you in a state, they want to control your emotions because they want you in a state of paralysis. They want you in a state of not doing anything so that they can just drive on flat road. Because again, these people are little, they are weak. They are also taking the helm of very powerful things. Two things are possible at once, right? But understand that as human beings, we outnumber them. Do not give up the strategic advantage of our numbers, okay? The small acts matter. They matter. And do what you can. Do what you can, and do not submit to the belief. And do what you can, and know that what you can do is enough, okay? I've shared a bunch on this live. I've given you some perspective. I'm sure there's so much going on that there are things that I may not have addressed. For that, I apologize. We will come back to it. I will be back. We will be chatting a lot over the next couple of years, okay? So there you have it. Love y'all. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye-bye.